Sorry that we're running a little bit late tonight. You know those occasional technical difficulties. You will remember that last time we were going through some of the terms that we see quite often here in the technical lessons. You'll also hear them in Tony's article lessons as well. We'll do a real quick review of some of the words that we learned with their explanations, and then we'll tackle a couple, 3 new words as well. Actually, a little bit more than that. Let's see if I can get all straight here. Okay. One of the first words that obviously we ever learn in Kabbalah, you will remember, is olam. And why is this such a special word? This is a really special word because it's so misunderstood. People think of it as a world. It means the word world, of course, as if it is some kind of a physical place. When we hear about the worlds of Adam Kodmon, and when we hear about the worlds of Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Yesiah, these worlds are not worlds like Earth or like a different planet. In spirituality, to change place means to change desire, not a location. Not a location. So, what is this thing called world? World is connected with another world, another word, Hebrew word, very, very closely, olamah, which means concealment or hidden, like hiding something. And this word here, then, actually, a spiritual world does not represent a place as we know it, but really that something is concealed, something to remember. So if we have a term like Adam Kodman, or if we go down the list to Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, and Yesiah, basically what we're talking about is greater and greater levels of concealment. Concealment of what? Concealment of the Creator, of the concealment of the Creator's existence. And why in the world that's done is obviously the study of Kabbalah, the technical study of how we got from here in the world of total concealment, how we got to here from Ein Sof, the infinite world. Now, we also went through some other terms. We went through some light terms, you will remember. We went through the word called yashar. 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 And whereas olam means worlds, yashar means direct. And what do we see this in connotation to? We saw it in connotation to the word or, and most of you already know what that word is. Or means light. And we have all sorts of different kinds of light. What does it mean that we have different kinds of light? In truth, there's only one light, and that's it. But depending upon the way we are at the moment, we actually end up with all sorts of different sensations of the same light, and we call it something different because to us, it's different. It's something completely, totally different. For instance, we have or yashar. That means direct light. We have or hoser, and this is reflected light. Or let's use a different word, returning light. Returning is a little bit more accurate Hebrew than reflected. Returning, and you all will remember this, with the kli, with the masach, and the direct light that strikes the masach, and reflects off of it or returns off of it. And this is the or yashar. And then we have the returning light, which is the or hosir. And then we have the amount of light that the vessel takes in, that's called or panimi. And we'll write down the new word, panimi. And or panimi is inner light. So panimi means inner. And then last week, during the technical lesson, of course, we spent the entire lesson on one thing, didn't we? A very, very important concept in Kabbalah. It's the amount of light that doesn't enter the partsuf, the vessel, but stays out of it, outside. And of course, this is the or makif, which is very important to us. Makif. And if we spell it more accurately, it would be like this. A lot of times you'll see it written M-A-K-I-F. That's more like or makif, and it's really or makif. What does it mean? It means surrounding. Surrounding. Now, and I am going to go through this rather quick so we can get to a few new words here. You will remember that this whole vessel thing here is, that vessel is called a kli. A kli. You will remember also that this thing that reflects that light off, that screen, that thing that screens out the thing that screens out the light and does not allow it into the vessel, until a calculation has been made as to how much light can be taken in only in order to benefit the giver. That thing is called a masach. Which of course means screen. And of course kli means vessel. Like a cup. Very important words to know. We also know that, I won't write them all down, but we also went through some numbers, didn't we? We went through shorish, meaning root. We went through the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet called Aleph, which means, it does not mean one, it's actually a letter in Hebrew. And, but we call it first because each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a designated number attached to it. For instance, Aleph is assigned the numeral 1. Bet, the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Bet, is assigned the numeral 2. Gimel is assigned the numeral 3. Dalet is assigned the numeral 4. And you can go on the website and you can find all of these. We already have a question from Louise in Santiago, Chile. Santiago. Is the evil the total absence of light? Darkness. Is evil lack of light? No. Evil is not lack of light. Evil is the state of only wanting self-benefit, and that's it. That's all, nothing else. And you will see this sentence over and over again with regard to the recognition of evil in Kabbalistic texts, or the term wicked applied. And what those actually mean is to receive only for self-benefit. And of course it's commonplace to us. Why? Is it a sin here? No. Why? There's no other option. In corporeality, that's it. You have one choice, and that's it. Let's get to a few more words here. And in fact, we did go through some that we need right now. And that is, if you all will remember, we drew a partsuf. And we divided that partsuf into some areas. For the Rosh, Toch, and Sof. And we had some other areas in it. We had this line here between the Rosh and the Toch is Pei. And this line here between the Toch and the Sof is the Tabur. And this final line down here is called the Siyum. Now, we went over this item called Rosh. What is the Rosh? You can think of it as the head. Toch as the upper body. Let's use that term. And then we have the Sof. And we can think of that as the lower body. We have the Pei, which is the mouth. The Tabur, which is the navel, belly button. El. And then we also have the Siyum. And of course, that means conclusion, or the absolute bottom, like under your feet. Now, we aren't going to be able to get to this. There is a question with regard, by the way, to Lishma, and we won't be able to get to it today, but would you please put that on the list? And next Sunday, I will address this word Lishma for you, and we'll talk about it more and where it came from and that type of thing. We certainly will, Deborah from Tennessee. We had a couple of other questions here. Well, we have one more. We have one with regard to Or Hasadim. Carl, I'm getting ready to get to it in just a minute here. So, we have the Rosh, the Toch, the Sof, the Pei, the Tabur, the Siyum, and we also have this thing is called a Partsuf. And we defined this spiritual entity as a spiritual entity. What's a Partsuf? A spiritual entity. What does it really mean? It really means faces. Faces. So it's not quite what the direct translation won't really help us out here. We won't really at this time be able to relate to the Hebrew word and why it would mean that. But down the road we will. Now we have some other words to get to here. And since it's on the list, I'm going to take the first word. You hear it a lot. There are two kinds of light. One kind is called Or Hakma. And you might see it spelled a lot of different ways. You all will remember the four phases of direct light. Phase Shorish, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, and Dalet. The light in phase Aleph is called Chokhmah. Chokhmah. Chokhmah is a word that means wisdom. It means wisdom. But in this particular case, what I want you to think about it is, what happened here? How's this defined? the stage of Aleph is that the Creator built a kli, built a vessel, and then filled it with pleasure. So let's think of Or Hakma as pleasure. It's pleasure right now. Okay? As this unbelievable, infinite pleasure that the Creator can give us. A gift from the Creator. Well, we have another kind of light. What's this other light? It is called Or Hasadim. Or Hasadim. So we can talk about this as meaning the light of wisdom. And what is this Or Hasadim thing? Light of mercy. Or correction. But what does that really mean? What is light of mercy? Well, we defined Or Hakma as pleasure, right? Light of wisdom is actually the pleasure that's received. But what in the world would this thing called mercy be? Well, if you will remember back in the classes, a couple of weeks ago we talked about this. There's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is that when the partsuf, actually when the kli, the vessel, takes in light, or hakma, the pleasure, what it feels is, it feels its own qualities, but it also feels the qualities of the Creator because it's doing it so that it can also have the status of the Creator to be able to be the giver. So it senses that this is what the Creator does. It wants to be the giver. It knows that the Creator's intention is for it to receive, and so it uses its power. It receives, it feels pleasure, it gets pleasure, but it does it in order to bestow. And that is a very complicated thing when you add in order to bestow. Unlike the simple thing of just receiving pleasure, you're adding an intention on top of it. And this is its primary concern. Why? Because of the great pleasure it receives from this as well. But there's a problem. By doing that, by receiving both, by actually receiving in order to bestow, it receives two pleasures. It receives the pleasure originally from the Or Hakma up in this stage, Aleph, called Hakma after that. And it also receives another kind of pleasure from the status of the Creator. So it receives two kinds. But it also understands now the difference between the Creator, because it experiences the Creator's trait of to be the giver, and also its own trait of only being pure reception. The distance between those two, the delta between those two, between the Creator's properties and its own properties, is called spiritual shame. Spiritual shame. Now, what does that mean? That means that unless it is taking in light, as long as there's this attachment to the, just to the pleasure. It wants the pleasure from the status of the Creator, and it also wants the pleasure from the pleasure, from the original pleasure that it received. It wants the everything. So you can't really call it as having a true intention. So it's going to make a law. It's going to say, nope, that's it, I'm done. I will receive nothing. This was called, another word, Tzimtzum. It really should be an S. T-S-I-M. Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum. What does this mean? It means restriction. It says, nope, I'm not receiving anything. Now, it just stops. Now, it makes a calculation. How much pleasure can I receive only under the express reason in order to bestow it, in order to give by receiving that pleasure? How much can I receive? This intention to give, this desire to do what the Creator does, the desire to bestow. It's not quite the same as an intention, but it's close. It's the next phase. It's called Behina Bet. Behina, you might remember, means stage or phase. Behina Bet. Bet. Phase number 2. It's called Bina. It's also called the Or Hasadim. That's the quality of the light. And it means only a desire to give. That's it. Nothing else. Nothing else. See if we have some questions here. It's a pretty good question. Jenny in England. Hi, Jenny. It must be late at night right there right now. When is it appropriate to introduce our children to this work? Is it wise to continue with the Christian ethic as simpler to understand, or will this confuse later teachings? You know, it doesn't matter. You should keep your child in the ethical system that it grew up in with regard to religion. Jenny, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't matter whether that is Judaism or Christianity, Muslim faith, it doesn't matter. We're talking about apples and oranges here. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the system that is set up there in how to behave in this corporeal world. But with regard to Kabbalah, there's a lot of material now that we have for children. Depending on the age of your children, there's a lot of material in English now. In fact, they're developing an English children's site. I don't know if that's finished yet or not. I know that there are some English books. So I would suggest to you that you check with some of the women on the forum if you go to the forum, and you'll be able to get more information on that. Also, of course, Jenny, you know that you have a Congress right there in England. What city is that in? Blackpool. It's in Blackpool, Jenny, Blackpool, England, that you ought to seriously consider going. I hope you can make that. And there will be people there that have all sorts of information about where they are in that process with the children. Louise from Chile. How is everything going to happen in accordance with the will of the Creator? We are able to change our possibilities? It's a good question. It's a good question. What would be best, Louise, is if you asked during the lesson in about 57 minutes. But let's try to stick with our Hebrew terms here now. So restriction. Restriction is, I'm not going to take the light. And then makes a calculation. I want to bestow, hasadim. How much can I bestow in order to please the Creator? So we're talking about different qualities here, different desires. What is it that I'm actually wanting to do? Let's go through a few more here. Hit lab shoot. Hit lab shoot. You can break it down in 3 syllables. Hit lab shoot. Hit lab shoot. The emphasis is on the last syllable. Hit lab shoot. Now, what is this? It's actually a quality. A quality. But a quality of what? Data of what? It's a piece of data. It's actually a piece of data regarding the light, or hakma, or hasadim. It has to do with how much pleasure is actually in this light. The quality of it, the strength of the pleasure. So let's call it that. The strength of pleasure. Now, there's two pieces of information. Remember that Partsuf, that emanated being, is trying to calculate, is trying to say, now, how much light can I take in only for my own benefit? Pardon me, only for the Creator's benefit. And how much do I just want it? Do I just want it? Well, this is the first piece of information. And there's another way of putting this. It's called data. Data about the light. The or. Data about the or. Information regarding the light. There's a second piece of information that's needed. And it's called avyut. 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 And what is it? What is this term avyut? This term is data about the desire. Now, in truth, it means thickness. Thickness, how thick something is. How thick, like for instance, you can think of it, and I think we went over this in class last time, that if this coffee cup, actually it's a teacup as we speak right now, but if it was filled with, say, part oil and part water, you would say that the avyut increases the higher you go up in the level of the cup. Why? Because it's going to be thicker up here at the top where the oil is than it would be down here. Be more dense. So, the best way to think of this is how thick the desire is, how dense it is, the strength of the desire. By the way, it isn't all just will to receive for oneself that has avyut. The screen has it as well. Now, why is this important? This is a very important word. And the reason that it is important is that we aren't talking about receiving in order to bestow, like I can receive, like from me, tomatoes, things that I don't care to eat. I don't like tomatoes. So I'm going to think, I'll be able to bestow the Creator and eat some of those tomatoes. No, if I don't want the blasted things, I'm not bestowing anything, because what does the Creator want to give me? It isn't that I'm doing something for the Creator and not enjoying it. The whole point is, if the desire for the pleasure isn't there right from the start, there's nothing to talk about. There's no act to make. So, what we have here is we have a kli, a desire. That's what we start with. And that desire is, say, for pizza. And let's say that I want that. I haven't eaten in 2 days and I'm very hungry. In other words, the avyut's real thick, real strong. And it would be very difficult for me not to eat that pizza just because I'm hungry, because it's so thick. That means that the strength in my masach has to be very, very thick as well. Very thick. It has to be what's the desire in the masach? The desire in the masach is that I want to be able to please the Creator. So, what we have And we can use some numbers here. We have a masak, and this, which is a screen, and we have a kli. And let's say that we assign numbers to this. If we have a vessel with the strength of, say, 3 for the pleasure. I want the pleasure, and I would put it on a scale of 1 to 5, a 3. But we have a masak with the desire to please the Creator of, say, level 4. No problem. No problem. I can do that. Or if we have a masak with, say, the strength of level 3 to wanting to please the Creator, no problem. But if I have a masak, say, the level of 2 instead of 4, now there's a problem. What's the problem? The problem is, yes, I want to use my desire to please the Creator, but this desire is, the pleasure is so great for me that if I do receive it, I'll just receive it in order to please me. I won't be able to actually receive it. Why? I want it too much. I want it more than I want to bestow. So it causes a problem. A couple more words for this evening. We did masak, reshimo. We talked about this actually once before when we were talking about the parsuf and the different parts to it. We talked about how each section in the parsuf was divided into 5 areas. And we talked about how the light exits from each area. And we talked about as it exits, it drops off into the next level below it. It drops off this reminiscence, this memory of that spiritual state above it. This reminiscence, this memory, is called a reshimo. Now there are different kinds. There's reshimo of the light. There's reshimo of the desire. That one had all the information about that state is there. But it doesn't stay in the same area. It goes down to the level just underneath it. So if I have 5 areas, Keter, Chokmah, Binah, Zer Anpin, and Malchut. And let's say we're talking about an area which is the lowest of low, just underneath the bottom of all spirituality. Total concealment. This is called our world, where there is nothing but concealment. Now, when the light exits the kli, it's throwing off reshimo. This one into this level, this one into this level, this one into this level, and this one into this level. And it shines here. What does that mean, it shines here? That means that we sense a special desire. And that very special desire is the desire for a kind of pleasure that we're just guessing at. We have no idea what this desire is. Not at all. We know that we can't fulfill it, though, through food, shelter, work, sex, children, family, money, power, control, knowledge. None of these fulfill this desire at all. So what are we going to do? We start searching for an answer for it. Some people don't start searching. Some people get everything that they want and they're still dissatisfied. And so they turn to things like drugs or illicit relationships. In truth, they've already got all they could possibly get from here. They're missing a pleasure from somewhere else. Excuse me. That desire, you all already know about. It is called the point in the heart. It's a desire for spiritual pleasure. Very special desire for that pleasure of doing what the Creator does. It's broke. It's down here all the way at the bottom. So it isn't working properly and I can't feel it. It's down here. I can't feel anything there. That's with regard to spirituality at all. Except this one desire. That's it. That's all you've got. We got two quick questions here. Brad from Camino Island, Washington. Camino Island, Washington. Is Kabbalah pantheistic or panentheistic? And if not, what aspect of reality does not? Okay, again, we're talking about questions with regard. This is a terminology class until 7. And not, okay, the thickness, here we go. Here's a question related to a word. The thickness of desire, that would be the aviyut, would be related, for example, with desires about improved natural skills. Desires about improving our natural skills? No. Thickness of desire is a desire for pleasure. Louise, it's to get pleasure. Pure pleasure. Give it to me. Whatever it is. I don't care what kind of pleasure, what I feel, just give me pleasure. It might be from a strawberry, or it might be from a massage. Doesn't matter. It's pleasure. And we are out of time. We'll be going... Oh, I did want to use one more. We're going to go a couple extra moments because we were getting on a little bit late. We're going to do one last word, and that is going to be... Put it right here. Ein Sof. Ein Sof. You hear this term a lot. What in the world is Ein Sof? In truth, we're going to define it as one word so you won't get confused. Infinity, or infinite, or endless. Any of those that are synonyms for them. And that's going to do it for us tonight for the terminology class. We will be doing more of this next Sunday evening at 5:30, and I promise also we will be going over that one term that you wanted, lishma and lo lishma, along with some other things that Tony's brought up. So I'll have that for you next weekend. We'll see you in about an hour and 40 minutes at the lesson. Bye-bye. No, pardon me. In 40 minutes. 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Bye-bye.